All right, everybody. We're back one more time with another episode, Dixie Doggers Podcast, coming at you live again, downtown Dog Pound. That's where we're at, boys. We have a guest with us tonight that's he's not a hog dogger per se. He might be an aspiring hog dogger pretty soon if he keeps messing around with us. Now we'll have him swapped over. But what this man does is a great service to a lot of people, and got to meet him last year, and it's been a pleasure knowing him so far. I hope to have a long friendship ahead, and so without further ado, this is our guest, Mr. Kyle Tolbert.
All right, yeah. Thank y'all for having me on. Appreciate you.
No problem.
Good hanging out with you. Feel like I've got to know y'all a little bit in the last year or two. Enjoyed hanging around you. But yeah, you're right. I'm not a hog hunter. Only because where I grew up, we didn't ever have hogs, and so I've killed, hunted, chased just about everything with fur on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't have hogs, but yeah. So I'm kind of into the deer tracking thing, and so yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Oh yeah, you're into the deer tracking stuff pretty heavy. Well, I know some guys that's all they do. That's their every waking breath, but they're not serious. They do it for themselves. They don't do it for their dogs. And you're a little different.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just my nature. I seem like I just jump head first, neck deep into everything I end up getting into. But yeah, tracking deer, I tell folks this all the time. Tracking deer's really something I do. It's not necessarily who I am. I'm a husband and a father and pastor of a Baptist church, and that's my life, and that's who I am. But with whatever leisure time I get in the fall, there's nothing else I'd rather do.
Right. And you don't track anything on Sundays?
No.
That's what I'm saying. You're busy being a pastor.
Yeah. I don't stay out late on Saturday nights, tracking most of the time. I'll track all day Saturday evening, but it's hard for me to stay out all night Saturday nights, Now the rest of the week's fair game, but then Sundays, I'm not able to do that. But yeah, we get after it pretty hard. That's really the only hobby I feel like I've got anymore is tracking deer, and man, I love it. Been tracking for probably 6 or 7 years or something is all. Now, like I said, I grew up hunting, and I grew up, like I said, squirrel hunting, coon hunting deer with dogs and everything. And but tracking, I've kind of only been in that 7 or 8 years, and probably one of the leaders in North Alabama that kind of got it going when it still wasn't real popular. So I know people have been tracking deer with dogs, for forever, but there's a man named Brian Ham up here in North Alabama, and I was really getting interested in tracking, and man, I'd kind of been working with a dog, and long story short, man, something kind of pretty tragic, but man, my dog got killed like the week before hunting season opened, and so anyhow, it all worked out. I'd shot later on that deer season. I'd shot a deer and couldn't find it. It was a really, really nice 10 point. So I called Brian Ham, and I thought, man, do you think there's even any need in us looking for this deer? I said, man, I ain't got any blood. I just found a few pieces of hair, so I know I hit it. Is there even any need? He's like, yeah, there's always a need. I can be there in about an hour. This was like 11 o'clock at night. He just stopped what he was doing and come out. So, man, we went and looked, and man, they tracked it. Dogs were just amazed me. I'd never seen anything like, what his dogs were doing. And so, yeah, they tracked the deer and they caught up with it and jumped the deer, but it just wasn't hurt, just couldn't do anything with it. But I just thought that was the coolest thing. I'm like, now I've kind of got a glimpse in a little bit of what I'd kind of been wanting to do. And so I talked to him and I was like, hey, if you get a chance to do this, you know, in the next few days, I would love to go with you. And man, he called me back the next day, and it just happened to be two really good tracks, and we bait up two big bucks, you know, dogs bait them up. And
Yeah.
man, I was hooked. You know, that was a bigger adrenaline rush than deer hunting had ever been for me.
Yeah.
And so from that point on, you know, man, I made a great friend. You know, he's been really good to me.
That's cool.
But I've just been hooked, you know, on tracking these deer. So
I think a lot of people have that misconception about, you know, the blood trailing or tracking or whatever you want to do, say, that, you know, it's just like, well, they shot a deer and you're going to walk with the dog for X amount of yards and you either find it or you don't. That, dude, I've seen the video, which we've had dogs over the years and we do it. But when you bait one up, hey, it's an adrenaline rush. There's excitement there.
Give you goosebumps.
oh yeah.
You know, so it's not just a kind of walking around with a dog on a leash. There's a lot of people that they get that misconstrued, and they think that it's not that a good blood dog is not going to be the equivalent of another working dog, say like a hog dog or a dog that's running deer. They don't think it's in the same category. And true enough, they're two totally different style dogs, but what kind of dogs do you use?
Yeah. So, you know, so that's a really broad question. So there's a lot of different styles out there. But now the style of tracking that I've took to, and that kind of gets, you know, just, I was real fortunate to kind of get started down the road, you know, with Brian Ham and him helping and seeing his dogs, you know. And so when I got started trying to get my own dogs, I had a vision of what kind of dog I was looking for. And that's really similar to a lot closer to hog hunting than maybe some other styles.
Yep.
So I'm running rougher curs. So my dogs, pretty much all my dogs go back to, a couple of them on the mama side is a rougher blackmouth. And then on the top side's just rougher Catahoulas, you know. So they're mainly just crossed curs with blackmouth and mainly Catahoula, you know, but they're just rough cow dogs. And
sounds like a hog dog just about to me.
a little hog dog mixed in.
That means seriously, that's because they, you know, you get a lot of cow dog stuff in there and blackmouth cur or Catahoula cur or a Kimmer cur, mountain cur, something like that. And usually if it's a crossbreed or something like it really works good on hogs. So, you know, and with you running dogs that are crossed like that, I think that's pretty cool. Cause I know there's a lot of purists that want some trackers, they want hounds, you know, cold nosed hounds. And then I've seen some that want a small dog that's real fast, you know, so I thought that was pretty cool that with the Catahoulas and the blackmouth curs.
Yeah. And I've had really good luck, you know, and man, you asked me one question, ask 10 other trackers and you might get 10 other answers too. You know, I like the little rougher, you know, a little bit rougher dogs, you know. You know, they some trackers that swear, you know, cause a deer, you know, well, let me back up. So, you know, but from what I've seen in the last 6, 7, or 8 years, about 60% of the deer we recover, about 2/3 are going to be alive. You know, the ones we recover, about 2/3 of those are alive. You know, so to me, it's a real big advantage to myself and the hunter to have a dog that will bay, you know, and track off lead. You know, some people prefer to track on lead, you know, and you know, they just, not saying nobody can get one that's still alive, but you know, a lot of times a deer will just stay out ahead of you, you know, a little ways. And so having a dog that'll go on, you know, similar style of dogs, you know, in a lot of ways, how y'all run, but you know, they'll get out ahead of you, you know, and bay that deer. And I've had better luck with a little bit rougher dogs, you know, because, you know, it just seemed like I don't have as many break bay and, you know, if the deer keeps going, you know, you'll eventually get to some obstacle that you can't get across, maybe a a road or a river or a lake or something like that, So yeah, in general, just rougher curves work really good for me. And that's what I prefer.
I got you. So that's kind of the goal with working your dogs like that. What is the ultimate goal that you're trying to achieve? Like you said, it's what you do, not who you are. With us, it's almost opposite, I guess you'd say. It's become what we are. Because like we've done it so long, like we've tried to figure out how can we do it more. And so we're trying to go through the business aspect of it. How can we utilize our knowledge and our dogs and all the things that we've learned and make it, self-supporting. And so with where you're at right now, what's kind of your goals and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to answer into like a long-term, 20-year down the road thing. You could be, what's your goals for this coming year? You want to have more dogs, raise more dogs or what?
Yeah. Well, I just want to do the best I can. I enjoy, what I guess brings me the most fulfillment, is kind of twofold. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy the thrill of the hunt, the chase, and the I guess the challenge of it, putting the puzzle together. But I really enjoy just helping people. Not to sound cheesy or anything, but like I know what it's like to hunt a deer, and finally get a shot at it and mess it up or something go wrong. That sick feeling. You're like, man, this is the biggest deer I've ever shot, or when my son shot his first deer or something, And so, when I pull up at the, to somebody's hunting club or hunting land or whatever, it's a bad day for them. They finally got a chance to shoot their target buck, or their son just shot his first deer and they can't find it or something like that. And it's a really bad experience, and I have the opportunity, and it works out, more times than not, and that I can fix that situation. And so I really, truly enjoy that part of it.
That's good.
And so yeah, just helping people, having better dogs, learning more myself, there's
a lot of people lose sight of that, being able to help someone, because the past 2 years, what do they say as soon as somebody calls about a track? How much does it cost? And I'm like, we don't really do all that. We'll come try to help you. And look, if they want to give you some gas money or something like that for your time, that's fine. Well, like I don't, but people lose sight. But I have heard of other people, they're talking hundreds of dollars right off the jump, whether they find it or not. And I'm like, oh, so that's the business aspect of it instead of the fulfillment.
Yeah. Yeah. And, everybody's different. I don't have any issue with how anybody does it. There's getting to be more and more trackers, all the time. But, I don't charge, it's just whatever, if somebody wants to pay me, they can. I care more about finding their deer. Yeah. Probably the most excited anyone's ever got and the most appreciative anybody has ever been to me was a guy that was literally dirt poor and broke. Yeah. And he told me ahead of time, he said, man, I've just got married. My truck broke down. He told me all these different things. He said, I really don't have any money. He said, but I'll give you something if you'll just come. I said, man, just tell me where you're at. It doesn't matter. Yeah. And man, he got there, we found his deer, and I've never seen somebody so excited, Oh,
you got paid over and over and over, didn't you?
Yeah. He gave me a handful of 22 shells and wouldn't take no for an answer,
Hey,
and it was fine, man.
That's your great fulfillment side of it. That's like I said, a lot of people miss that. And even with what we do, like I said, and I'm the same way, what you just said, I'm not going to fault anybody for charging to do something that's what they do. I'm not going to do that either. That's them. There's certain things that we charge for. And when I first started, I was like, I don't see why anybody would ever have to charge. But it gets to a point to where when it's a demand and it's a huge service and it acquires a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of your money put in it, to get reimbursed is the least amount, least thing.
Yeah.
So, but getting that fulfillment part, it really is something different, and to see a dog do the work, and especially if it's a dog that you bred up and you raised, man, that's just full circle then.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And, in my experience, it works out, I mean, you may go somewhere where maybe they don't have a lot of money, but then the next track you go on, maybe somebody that's in a lot better situation and, they'll hand you, a good bit of money and it all kind of works out. But, like I tell folks too, I mean, the Lord's blessed me with a good job. And I mean, I'm not rich by any means, but I'm not struggling, to get by or anything. So I don't have to track, for a living, but there's some people that, it is part of their income, and man, I get that, and I ain't down on that at all.
Yeah, exactly. You can, and like I said, I didn't mean that statement like that a while ago, and I know that, but for listeners out there, that please don't take it like I was trying to do that because
when you also hear it's like $250 a drop, even if I don't find it, I'm like, oh, that's
And I've heard people that, but now I've also talked to some guys out in Texas. Yeah, them cats are $500.
But if you have a world-class deer on the ground, then it's like, what does it matter? Now, like, you get 160, 180-inch deer. Yeah, I pay $250 for somebody to come look for it.
There's another guy out in Texas. We need to get with him one time too. Marc Allison. Now I don't know what he charges. Now please don't get into that. But I know as far as the last time I spoke with him at one of the terrier trials, been a few years ago, he would track deer for a lot of these. I guess it was like the high fences out in Texas. Somebody pays $10,000 to shoot this trophy deer, and they needed a dog there because some of those areas are 10,000, 20,000 acres. I'm pretty sure that they don't mind paying a few $100 to find that deer after they done paid that much to get the deer.
Yeah, or any other kind of the million different species of exotics they have out there in Texas.
Hey, that's a good thing right there. Kind of, it'll go kind of hand in hand with one of the topics about the science of the blood tracking. But how often do your dogs trash? Like like Nate was talking about the other exotics and stuff. There's other species of game. How straight are the dogs on that? If you got a good track going and they run across armadillo or coon or anything, does that hinder them?
No, not really. So
they're not hog dogs.
My two, I'd say a finished dog. I've got two, sure enough, in my opinion, just my two best dogs. And then I've got two others that are really, really good by anybody else's standards. Then I've got a couple puppies, that I'm kind of working on. But now my finished dogs, especially my oldest dog, it means nothing to him. Another deer, an armadillo,
nothing's getting in the way.
None of that means anything.
Now, what's that dog's name?
Tater.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tater. Yeah. That's who I thought it was, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
I know we talked about him a little while back.
Yeah. So, and then I've got a female named JoJo. Jolene's her name. We call her JoJo. But those two are probably like my main two, and it really doesn't matter. Now JoJo, when she was a puppy, she was a little more high strung. She'd crash a little bit, but some of that just comes with age. But like Tater, and unless that deer, and we can get into this in a minute too, but unless it's that deer that's been shot, it means nothing to him.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be 10 deers. I mean, and he would bump them out of the way before he chased them, and unless it's that one that's been shot, and he is just that solid. So,
to go more like in kind of the science of it, like how how would he be able to differentiate? Like, what are some of the glands or the different smells that he might be picking up on for other people, listeners that might not be super familiar with blood tracking?
Yeah, and that's one of those things that's a little debatable among the tracking community. Historically, I guess you could say, at least in my lifetime, pretty much everybody there was a school of thought about the interdigital gland in the deer's hoof.
Mm-hmm.
So next time you kill a deer, shoot one or whatever, right above their hoof, you split their hoof apart and kind of peel the hair apart, and you'll see that little gland that's in their hoof.
Mm-hmm.
And that's called the interdigital gland. And everything I've ever read and everything I've ever heard taught at any of the seminars, things like that, all goes back to the pheromone that comes out of that gland. And I think there's other things too. I don't know. I don't understand all about it. I don't know that anybody truly understands it, but there's a end of life smell, or pheromone that maybe comes out of that gland, and then maybe there's other, like dandruff and hair and just gut matter and blood and everything and even the dirt turned up. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know all the science, but there's all at least a mix of all that into how the dogs know. And it's not just my dogs or tracking dogs, but coyotes. Like I grew up in the woods deer hunting, and you really don't see coyotes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not saying it's never happened. As a disclaimer, I ain't saying it's never once happened, but for the most part, you really don't see coyotes run and grown healthy deer.
That's way too much work for them.
Yeah, but at least in North Alabama with a coyote population, if one's been shot, coyotes will be on it pretty quick. So there is that end of life, wounded scent that just Mother Nature gives the predators somehow or another, and so and I guess it's the same way, like growing up watching National Geographic, that there'd be 1,000 antelope in some prairie, and the lions could find the one that was sick.
Yep. They have like a distress pheromone of some sort.
Yeah, and so deer have that as well. Like I said, I don't know all the science about it, but I know there. I mean, there's no question, zero question at all in my mind that it's there, because they can be 20 deer in a food plot, and you shoot one of them, and my dogs will track the one that's been shot. Every time,
whether there's any blood or not.
Yeah. The blood, from what I can tell, blood just don't seem to mean much to my dogs.
Exactly. That's
I've seen dogs lick it up more than ever really do anything past that.
Yeah, it's not like they're and that's why it's kind of one of those deals where you say, well, I got a blood trailing dog. It's like, is it really blood trailing? But like you said, there's so many other things there. I was shocked the first time that I had one that there was no exit wound at all, and just about didn't even find the entry wound after we found it. And it was like, how did this dog smell this? It was like, it just amazed me.
Yeah.
Even it was a very, very young dog, just a few months old, and it blew my mind. I was like, so like I said, the whole blood thing, that's the least of your worries, is having good blood. Having a good dog is the best thing.
Yeah. And, and I can usually tell, just by the way my dogs take to a track, if that deer's really hurt and he's really putting off a lot of gland, and my dogs, they're digging to get that deer. And if a deer that was just kind of grazed, or something, or, just wasn't hit very hard, didn't break any bones, they're a lot slower tracking it. They're not near as excited, and it's like they're struggling. It's almost like that, because they're so keen to that injured scent, that if that's not there, or if it's not very strong,
they're having to work harder.
They're having to work harder, and you take a deer that was hit really hard, I mean, it almost has the same effect as being a fresher scent because it's like there's more scent there.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. The scent
there
can
may be
last
some,
longer.
yeah, there may be some biologist that thinks I'm a nut right now, but I swear that's what I see when I'm tracking, and a lot of times we'll see a deer that wasn't hit very hard, and they'll track it a ways and they'll get slower and slower and struggle more and more until they finally get to the point where that deer just smells like any other deer, and
Yeah, basically he recuperated, like his
yeah,
hormones have leveled back out, basically.
yeah. I mean, and I kind of,
it's like a boar hog way they smell after, dogs been on them hard. If you're going to an area and the dogs were running a big boar hog,
and he got hot and
you could smell him yourself.
Hormones.
You could smell him. You say, man, he was right here, and then sure enough, it's not going to be very far, and you're going to see him.
Yeah,
like he gives off a deer. But other than that, now he's not going to smell like that all the time.
No, it's usually
that stress. Yeah, that distress. Yep. So I didn't even really think about that on the deer side of it.
Yeah. And I didn't think about it weaning off as it went. Like if a deer basically was like, hey, like I'm hurt, but I ain't dying. I'm walking this off. Basically like gathering themselves back up, hypothetically. Of course, it's hard to say that's for sure what's happening, but I mean that's a good hypothesis in my mind.
Y'all crazy. Hey,
biologist. I like that thinking.
I'm gonna call Dr. James Kroll and ask. I'm gonna be like, Doc, what's happening? And are they crazy?
I'll email Steve Damaris and see what he says.
Hey, that's your professor. It ain't mine.
He ain't my professor no more.
He was.
He was.
Shout out to Dr. Steve Damaris.
Yeah. And my buddy,
I swear it's sort of like that.
I believe you, without a doubt.
A lot of times, you'll shoot, they'll shoot a deer, and maybe it's not hit very hard, and that deer will eventually it'll go bed down somewhere, and I tell folks a lot of times it's like if I fell off the ladder, and I'm like, and it's hurting real bad, then I go sit down in a chair.
Yeah. And
I'm like, okay, yeah, my leg's not broke, my arm ain't broke.
I get up and go. Yeah.
I think it's just a scratch. I think I'm okay, and I settle down, go on about my life, And I feel like that's kind of how tracking can be,
I do too. Like I said, now that you put it, he put it in those terms. It just it does.
So now having all these philosophies and these theories, and you got all these puppies, how are you getting them started? What's kind of your process? I mean, you ain't got to reveal all your secrets, but I got a good buddy named Larry. He's not a good buddy, but I met him at a wedding, and he's from Ohio, and he was wanting to start some blood trailing dogs. And so I was like, well, I know a guy I'm going to record a podcast with that's got some blood tracking dogs, so I will make sure that I get it straight from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, man, I'm an open book. No secrets here. So I use deer legs. I think like when a puppy's young, I've drug like beef livers, deer livers, or just drug a little deer hide, like maybe 20 yards in the yard, and let them chew on it, fight and play. Just let it be some high value reward, But then after a while, once they kind of get to where they're putting their nose down and they'll follow that scent, then you want to start challenging the dog. And so then I'll start I've got a freezer full of deer legs, and I'll take a deer leg, clamp it to a stick, like a pot.
Yeah.
And I'll take a screwdriver. A key works as well. And I didn't invent this method. Paul Kujay and Kenny Mullen, just two trainers that I've learned a good bit from. And this is basically how they do it. But I'll take that a screwdriver or a key, and I'll stick it up in that interdigital gland between their hooves and scrape out like earwaxy stuff. It's just what's inside the gland. It's kind of like earwax.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'll take that and I'll smear it all over the bottom of the hoof, and I've got that hoof and it's on a stick, and I'll just take off, stamping that hoof in the ground, about every 2 or 3 feet. I'll just take off walking, and I'll try to do it in the woods where there's other scents, squirrels and other deer tracks and trails and things like that, and make it short, to begin with. Start putting some turns in it, start letting it age, and things like that. And and the dog will You start working like that. And, I don't really feel like, it's necessary, but like, I don't try to have the mindset I'm going to finish a dog by training and, with deer. I want that dog to where he will track independently, and he'll put his nose down and he'll track, and he's learned, that if I follow this, good things are going to happen, and once that dog will do that, that's really where I need him to be as far as, training goes. There's some folks, they'll really just go nuts on the training, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, to me, where the rubber meets the road is when you get that dog in the woods on real tracks, and real experience. And I tell people this too, because man, I've been asked a million times, about that. But I don't think the reward of finding a treat at the end of the line, or even a deer hide to chew on, is near the reward for a prey-driven dog as jumping a live deer, and one that's been shot in the leg or guts or something that's still a little bit alive, and getting to chase it and bark at it and bay it. I feel like, once a dog gets on one that's alive a time or two, that really makes a dog.
Yeah, it just kicks it into high gear. He's like, okay, I know what we're doing now. We're getting these things.
Yeah, and it's probably the same way hog hunting a little bit. Like when you take one of these young dogs and it's like the light bulb comes on.
Oh yeah,
like that's an addictive feeling, as a handler.
No better feeling in the world.
We used to do a lot of training years ago. Of course, back then we were allowed to have live hogs, wild hogs and stuff, and we would utilize that. I mean, you can't do it with deer, but what we would do is, we'd take a smaller pig that for the pups, and that was their, like you said, they didn't get a treat. That was their reward, was to get the game. Yep. And so for a long time after we got where we couldn't have any live hogs, man, it got harder. So we were putting with older dogs. And then finally I was like, you know what? It's all going to be trial by fire. We don't do any training at all at the house other than, loading and unloading, just getting them accustomed to going with us, load them in the box, handle them and stuff like that. But then when it's time to go hunt, like last year, Nathan's Catahoula, we had grown dogs in the box that were, pretty much finished out dogs, but we wouldn't even turn them loose. We would let the pup run the track by himself. Yep. And man, it really, really worked. It's frustrating
because he's gonna mess up.
Yeah, it's especially when you see a 250-pound boar hog and this pup is smoking it, and then the hog just smokes the pup, and you really want to turn loose these other dogs to show him, but you're like, I want to have a good independent dog, right? And so it's there. It's like, so that's the way that we were doing it. But I've often thought about, some people that I've talked with over the years, they do the same thing like you're talking about with a hog foot, with a hog hoof. They'll do pretty much the same process with the puppies.
I wonder if hogs have an interdigital gland.
I've never even looked.
Because that's a good idea. I'd never heard of the training I never thought of it like that. Like when you were saying it, I was like, yeah, that makes the most sense.
That's what I'm saying, because for so many years, like he can't go get a deer and put it at the house and be like, okay, puppies, chase this deer. But we could. So the training was way easier, dude. It was like we had dogs, we made dogs pretty easy. And then when they took all that away, it was a lot harder. And so I kind of get what you're saying there, and the amount of time that you have to put in these pups and to get them to where they're going. And so their reward, like you said, it's okay when they're real small to give them a little piece of a deer hide or something like that. But ultimately they need something to chase.
Yeah. And in my experience, when you can overtrain, at least for my style of tracking. Somebody else may be very controlled, kind of methodical way of doing it, especially the on lead trackers. And, I've seen folks online and stuff, they want their dog to heel all the way to the shot site, and then they want it to lay down, and, and they don't want it to pull on the lead, and that's all this kind of stuff. I track off lead. But what I've learned is, at least for my style, you can overtrain a dog.
Yeah.
And then what you'll create is a dog that's just constantly looking at you and waiting on you to tell it to do something, instead of going off and finding the deer that I want it to find,
Mm-hmm.
And so there, there is and I don't know, maybe this is, I guess, maybe another topic, but I feel like that's kind of the balancing act with tracking versus maybe hunting,
Mm-hmm.
I'm, like if you're hog hunting or coon hunting, you're going to cast your dogs, and they're going to go out and they're going to find the hog, the coon, the squirrel, whatever it might be. I'm 99% of the time I'm walking to a spot where I know the deer was standing or there's blood. I'd say 90% of the time at least, and so, there's a little bit of control there that maybe I wouldn't desire as much, if I was, hog hunting or coon hunting or something. Now I don't necessarily want my dog to cast out for 500 yards just hunting,
Yeah.
I don't mind if he's running around 20 or 30 yards ahead of me or something while I'm walking in.
If ours won't go 500, we're not going to have, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a bad way to nobody, because there's plenty of people. It's a method of hunting that you use.
Yeah.
But for us,
generally anything under 500, that's walk hunting.
Yeah, that's
we'll walk hunt that dog.
And like you're saying, walk into a spot that's controlled. Okay, here's my look at it. We cast our dogs out, say 500 yards, and there's hogs over there. They're laid up in a wallow, or they just got off of a feeder or out of a green field, and man, they're laid up full. And our dogs are silent dogs. They ease up in there, bam, the race is on. Or they catch them, whatever, right there. In your case, your game is already gone.
Yeah.
It's in a hurry. It's in survival mode. It's getting the heck out of there. It's getting on out of the way. And there's so many other variables in there. And, I don't, to me, it's kind of crazy, because it's like, for a long time, I didn't see it as, I didn't see the comparison there. I was like, it's like, how could this tracking dog be anything compared to what this hunting dog is?
Yeah.
Well, it's a hunting dog, but it's hunting it's hunting at the peak.
It's not opportunistic. It knows what it's supposed to be going. It's like, okay, here's the track, follow this.
Exactly. It's
where instead of going to hunt for a track.
Pretty wild, like I said, I just look at it as that. It's like, okay, this game is already injured. It's in flight mode, defense mode.
It's already ready to go.
Yeah. And like I said, and ours is kind of, most of the time they're just chilling, and then we, then we stir them up.
Yeah.
So my hat's off to it,
Yeah. So a lot of times you're probably just looking, for any hog or a
group. Nothing specific. Very seldom.
But I've got one that the hunter shot at, and that's the one I'm going to.
Yep.
And so I want my dogs to be pretty controlled on the way to the shot site, and then I get them there. I don't want one dog going 500 yards east, another 500 yards west.
Yeah.
Then I got to tone them back, wait on them. We're all going, we're going to walk together, and to the shot site, and then once they get started there, then they're going to, most of the time, how the track works out, they're going to. Hunter's going to tell me where the deer was standing, and I'll ask a lot of questions a lot of times. But once the dogs get started down that deer's track, the direction it went, they're typically going to get in a fast walk. Depends on how fresh the track is or whatever. And they're going to get in a fast walk, and I'm going to let the dogs get 100, 200 yards ahead of me, and then I'm going to start walking the way they go. And, and they'll go until they get to the deer, whether it's.
I was going to say there's not a set limit on their range. Then they're going to go until they find it, or it's gone.
Or I hit the tone button.
Yeah. Okay. On that right there, what during the recovery and stuff, what what's the process for deer recovery after the hunter shoots, until it's recovery time? What? Because like you just said, you want your dogs to do these things. What do you want the hunter to do?
Yeah, I tell.
Because you said you ask a lot of questions and stuff. So
yeah, and it's not because I don't trust them or they mean anything, but I'll ask them what they shot it with, how the deer was standing, and all that's just so I can try to fit together in my mind where they based off
success. That's what you're after.
Yeah, and try to figure out where they hit the deer, and try to have a game plan. If I feel like they shot, and a lot of this is just a phone interview before I go out there. And the questions I ask doesn't have anything to do with whether I'll come or not. It's more or less just, when I should come, you know. And so if I feel like based on the blood and how the deer was standing, how the deer reacted, if it was shot in the guts, well, then I need to wait longer, and if that deer was, if they've got, for example, if they've got bone on the ground, that deer was shot in the leg, and we might as well just go now, and so yeah, I'll get there, and I don't mind the hunters going with me most of the time. Most of the time I tell them, don't worry about their gun, if they do bring it, at least leave it unloaded, so if you trip behind me, don't shoot me in the back. But because, if the deer's alive, we're going to have time, and so, and I tell them, whatever they do, if the deer's alive, my dogs are baying, they're not shooting. And I've never had any trouble, I've never had any bad experiences there. Mm-hmm. And if it's where I can, I'll call the dogs off and I'll let them shoot, and that's happened some, but yeah, so we'll walk to the shot side, and they'll take me to where the deer was standing or blood, and I like them to know where last blood is, and things like that. Dogs will hit the line, and I say, like, for example, like a gut shot deer, most of the time that deer is going to be, if they haven't jumped it 200 or 300 yards, leg shot deer, I'd say inside 600 or 700 yards most of the time, sometimes less. It kind of depends on how thick it is, but yeah, we'll let the dogs get, 100, 200 yards ahead of us, and then I'll just start walking behind, and my dogs are silent, just like what you run.
Yeah.
And the reason I walk a good ways behind them is because I want my dogs to be the ones to jump that deer if he's alive. And I don't want the deer to hear me blundering through the woods or me and the hunter talking, and we're the one that kind of got the deer up, because I really want the dogs to hit him while he's in the bed, if possible. And so yeah, then, and like I said, the deer's either laying there dead and they'll just sit and chew on it, until I get there, and I'll see them on my handheld being still, and I'll know the deer's dead, or if he's still alive, they'll jump the deer and bay him up somewhere,
So if they're baying the deer and deer tries to get rowdy with them or anything like that, they'll catch him.
Oh yeah, and that's the reason.
Good dog.
That's the reason. That's the reason the dogs I like, and this is just me. There'll be somebody that disagrees with me, I'm sure. But I feel like if a deer, where a deer is different than a hog, a 250-pound boar hog is more dangerous than a 250-pound deer, 250-pound buck. But a 250-pound buck is pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
But for the dogs, but I still think a hog is meaner on a dog.
Oh yeah.
But one thing about a deer is I feel like if that deer gets pulled down, and now remember, we're tracking wounded and weak deer. If deer's not wounded and he's not weak, my dogs, they probably ain't gonna run him, but they sure ain't gonna catch him.
Yeah.
But if this deer's wounded and weak, running a couple rougher dogs will pull that deer down. And there's something about a deer, once you get them off their feet, it ain't like they just completely give up, but a lot of their fight.
Yeah, it takes a lot out. Yeah.
Yeah. And so to me, that's the benefit of running a couple of rougher dogs is, Tater and Migo, Tater and JoJo, Migo, Joker. And I got 4 of them that are all just real rough. And, if I run 2 of them, or sometimes I'll track with 3, I feel like a 2-dog team is a good compromise of being easy to handle and stuff. But yeah, if I can get that deer down, I feel like it's safer for my dogs, and he ain't going anywhere. They're not going to let him get up, and so there's people that like looser baying, dogs that maybe aren't going to catch, but Tater now, I mean, he's going to catch a deer. And that's one thing that makes him really, really good is he catches in the butt.
He set him down.
Yeah, he's going to catch one in the hind quarter. If the deer squares off with him.
Is he full-blooded, a purebred blackmouth cur, Catahoula, or is he a cross as well?
He's half and half Catahoula, half blackmouth. Yeah,
I was just curious.
Yeah, he's just a big, mean, rough, catchy dog, and JoJo, she's the same way. Now she's gonna be hanging off of its ear like a hog dog. I mean, but now she gets
these dogs more and more now.
she gets treated a little rougher sometimes than Tater does by the deer. She's on the business end of it.
That's right.
But yeah, once 2 dogs will get that deer spinning, and once he starts turning, that one of them's going to pull him down. And once he gets down, he probably ain't getting back up.
Yeah. And so like, can you call them off like after they've caught as well, or only when they're baying?
Both. Yeah.
And so like you was talking about, overtraining and stuff like that. So what point is it like, okay, this dog has enough handle. I don't need to teach him anything else. Like what is your kind of sweet spot on a handle of a dog? What does a dog need to be able to do to work fluidly with you as a team?
We'll be back after a quick break.
We would like to interrupt this episode to take a moment to thank our sponsors and friends of Dixie Doggers Podcast. Southern Cross Cut Gear, Boars N Broads, Hardcore Hog Dogs and Cut Gear, Showtime Premium Pet Food, Animal Housing Solutions, Tuskers Magazine, American Doghorn Association, 4L Kennels, Hogbang.com, The Boar's Nest, Crockett Taxidermy, Mud Creek Hog Baying. A big shout out to all those people and companies who help make us who we are. Thank y'all.
Yeah, what I've learned, and it's just mistakes that I've learned just because I've set a few dogs back by overtraining.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had an old blackmouth one time, and I'd made up my mind that was going to be, the best trained, obedient tracking dog that anybody's ever seen, and I set that dog back a whole year just because he didn't want to get out from under my feet because he's constantly waiting on me to call him back or tell him to do something,
Yeah.
And so kind of where I'm at now is, I don't care if my dog sits and lays down and rolls over, plays dead, shakes my hand. I don't care about any of that. Really, I just want him to load up in the truck, but I want him to come to me when I call. It doesn't matter if he's 10 yards or 10 miles,
So recall is probably your biggest focus.
That is my biggest. And I try not to overdo that with the young dogs because I don't, like I said, I want them to go off and leave me, but I need them to come back, because we're not always tracking deer in the middle of 10,000 acres,
Yeah.
I may get called and I'm 100 yards from a highway. And, when that, if I need that dog to stop, I need to be able to stop it, and
now are you mainly,
so that's the biggest thing.
Now, are you mainly using an e-collar to teach them their recall and to get them to listen even when they don't want to, or how are you approaching this?
Yeah. So my method, and this has worked pretty good with me, but yeah, I'll put an e-collar on. First I'll get them, just kind of coming with a treat a little bit, as a puppy, just learning their name or whatever. But, then get out in the yard and typically what I've had the best luck doing is using an e-collar. And the key is the stimulation being as low as you can get by with. And what I've done is have my wife out there and might even have to start with a long lead and usually use a few treats or something. But, if the dog is over towards her, I'll call the dog, and as soon as I start calling, I'll hit the stimulate. And as soon as the dog comes to me and my hand touches the dog, I'll let off the stimulation. Mm-hmm. And that's like the off switch. And then I can get my wife will do it, and she'll call. And then and as soon as her hand touches the dog, I'll let off the stimulation. And like in one afternoon, you can have a solid recall with your dog out in the yard.
And when you say as low as you can get by, how do you determine that?
So I'm typically just looking at the dog to, like, if he just kind of flinches or he just kind of looks like, hey, what was that? Like, that's kind of where I want to be.
Yeah, you don't want to be squealing or nothing.
Or jumping around. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of counterproductive.
And you're running a Garmin, just so we're all clear.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Okay. Yeah, and my tracking system is the Garmin Alpha.
Yeah, that's what like we tend to use our tracking collars and all as our e-collars all in one.
It's a built-in e-collar.
And so that's why I was just throwing that out there, because there's a lot of people that, they don't use a certain brand or something like that, but a lot of us use Garmin. So
yeah, and then once the dog's learned his name, I'll start mixing the tone in, to recall. And then here at my house, I've got a big field, and I'll let the dogs get out and range out, and or carry them out in the woods walking, and start getting them used to tone more, just as much or more than me just calling them by name.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's kind of how I do it. That's just some of the stuff I do in off season, but like I said, I don't want to overdo it, because I don't want the dogs to be scared. Like if every time a dog hits 50 yards from you and you call it back or you tone it, then you'll get out in the woods, at least with a young dog, and he'll go out there 50 yards and he'll stop and wait on you to catch up, or something like. It's like they don't want to go on. So, there's a mix there, of having enough handle on a dog, but not too much,
Yeah.
And
that's like, I think a lot of, and I mean, don't hold me to this 100%, but there's a lot of guys that I've talked to that bird hunt, and they'll use say they want their dog to be 100 feet in front of them. That's what they'll have, a check rope.
Yeah.
And every time that dog goes there, that's it. And like you said, just a few afternoons on a young dog, and that's as far as he's going to go.
Yeah.
So they're setting that range. So, you're going, but you're not, that's not your objective. Yeah. Your objective is, but you can make it to where you set that range, like you said, by overtraining.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and like I said, I want my dogs to go as far as they need to go. If it's a mile, if it's a half a mile, or or whatever, I want them to go until they get to the deer, or I hit that tone button, because they're, like I said, it could be the interstate, that's
something stopping
that's out there. Yeah. And it's so yeah, it's important, to have that handle on one. But again, at least for me, you don't need to overtrain one.
Yeah. What's kind of, I guess you'd say maybe the average length of a track that you go on? Just say like some kind of average. If you had to take them all together and do an average, what would you think would be your average on the distance?
Average.
And I know you're good with math, because I know where you work.
Yeah, I'd say 500 to average, maybe 500 to 800 yards.
Okay.
I've usually got one or two every year that are just gimmies. That deer didn't go 50 yards, 60 yards, and it was just thick, and they couldn't find it. There's usually one or two of them, and then there's a couple every year that go 2, 3, 4 miles.
It always amazes me when people are looking for a deer and they've got blood. They're like, man, we have been tracking this deer for miles, and it's really 100 yards. It's like it's like the distance, because you're going so slow. And I've done it myself. Looking for one last year, and I was like, man, it seems like we have went 5 miles. And like we didn't, of course. And I really learned another thing about a young dog is just listen to the dog. They'll tell you a lot more than you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's the hardest thing, is just trusting the dog, because we've as people or deer hunters, we've got it in our mind where that deer went and where it wouldn't go. And that, and so especially when you've got a young dog and you first get started tracking, that dog really hadn't earned your trust. So you don't really trust it as much as you need to. And, that can cost you, getting started. But yeah, that's one of the main things is just trust the dog. And I've got to that point, like with Tater and JoJo. I don't care if they take me through a Walmart parking lot.
That's right.
I'll bet the farm that's where that deer went, and so, but it takes a while to get that much confidence in one. But yeah, I mean, most of the time the dog is right.
Yeah.
And we're wrong.
Yeah. And that was another one of the little topics that we were, discussing, like, speed versus accuracy on it. So the accuracy part, to me is always going to win. And I think that over time, the speed will come with that as well. So what would you look for as far as a dog that's starting out? Would you rather have speed, on the speed versus accuracy deal, or because, to me, I would think the accuracy is going to win out.
Yeah, so, man, that's such a tricky question. And my answer to that has probably changed in the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you have to break the track into two parts. But if from the shot site and to if it's a dead deer, then I think accuracy for sure wins.
Yeah.
And then you've got deer that are still alive, maybe it's shot in the leg, or for whatever reason, but it's not dead yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think accuracy wins until you get to that deer. But if that deer's alive, and say you got a leg shot deer, we get a lot of leg shot deer.
Yeah.
And so say that deer shot in the leg, I think a faster dog will keep more pressure on that deer, and he will bay up faster. Okay. as opposed to a dog that will maybe jump the deer, run it a little ways, and then go back to tracking, real slow. I feel like that deer will get out ahead, and then he'll stop, and he'll rest, and then the dog catch up and he'll go further. And I feel like you'll push that deer further and further. But if you got a leggy dog, like JoJo, my female, man, I swear she can run like a greyhound.
Yeah.
And, I feel like I catch deer and I get them to bay faster because of the extra pressure that she'll put on one. Now, Tater, he's just kind of medium paced, and he's getting older, and he's just more like a hard soldier, he's just going to get in the march, and he's going to go, and he jumps it, he'll run. But then after that deer gets out ahead of him, he'll kind of go back to tracking, in a fast track, in a trot or whatever.
So he's a real accurate dog.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
What kind of statistics? I mean, like how many recoveries and stuff, like versus, or how many tracks versus recoveries or whatever, do you keep up with that? Pretty good.
Do. Yeah, not as much detail as some, but yeah, I usually run in the 60% as far as tracks I go on versus deer I put on the tailgate.
Yeah.
There's some every year, that was a miss. They just totally missed the deer.
That's right.
And
now
then
that's
there's
not,
some that,
for clarification for listeners, that's not 60% of deer that you went on a track and were recoverable. No, that's 60% of all tracks that you go on. So there could be, 35% of those were clean misses, and people just didn't want to accept that, or something.
Yeah, I mean, I work harder and I spend more time on the tracks that I don't recover the deer, because I want everybody to feel comfortable. And most of the time they do, but yeah, I'm like last year I was around 68%. Year before was like 60, 64, 66. I can't remember, but approximately I put about 2/3 of them on the tailgate. Like I said, some of them they were just nicked, they just knocked the little hair off of them, or just barely nicked them, or maybe just missed them. And, some of them cross Smith Lake. I mean, I lose a handful every year. The deer swims Smith Lake, or swims the Mulberry River or something. And I just can't get to it. And maybe I would have got it, maybe I wouldn't, but there's the things like that. But now like Tater and JoJo, like if that deer's putting any gland on the ground, they are about, I mean, they are real close to 100%, they if that deer's got enough gland on the ground to I can get to it. I mean, they're going to get me to that deer. That don't mean I can put it on the tailgate, because, I mean, a deer that's not hurt, they just ain't nothing I can do with it. Which if it ain't hurt, my dogs won't even track it good. But
right.
But if it's got 4 strong legs and it ain't hitting the vitals, I probably can't recover it. But most of them show back up on trail cameras anyways.
Yeah, that's right. How do you because a lot of times you go to call and then you got to travel and all that. What I'm throwing out there right now is the length of the time of the track. Most tracks that you're going to be put out on are going to be, an hour, 2 hours old to start out with, right? Or older.
Mm-hmm.
So like on the recovery time on those tracks, what's your average, you would say?
What's a high?
And
what's
then
a
what's
low?
what's the oldest track that you went on and recovered? These are ones I want to talk that were recovered. Because we've been talking to several people about the age of a track. Now, of course, yours is a little different because
it's more definite.
Yeah,
for sure.
but it's definite. But just to put in perspective of the length of time a dog can.
Because it's also the similar style dog, and these dogs probably have noses about the same strength as our curs, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So, just what kind of the length of time. I was just curious about that. I didn't even throw that out there before, but see what that is.
I mean, I would say most of the time, I'd say an average, would be 6 or 8 hours, sometimes less.
Yeah.
Would be average.
That was more than I was going to say 3 to 4 hours maybe, and I know that they'll take older tracks, but that I like that. That's it. Come on with it.
Yeah, and
everybody says them cur dogs can't do nothing more than 4 to 6 hours. Come on with it. Tell us the truth.
Oh no. Oh, I can tell you. Oh yeah, they've got way more than enough. So I usually get some every year that's over 40, 36 to 48 hours old, couple days.
Forgive me, preacher, but holy shit! Wow,
that's impressive.
Yeah. And
that's our audio clip.
I got one this past year.
Wow.
I got one this past year that was 40 something hours when I got there. It had done been run and bayed by another dog, and the dog got hurt or something. I'm not real sure what happened, but the dog had bayed the deer, ran it like almost a mile. They jumped it 400 or 500 yards in, and then at about a mile had the deer bayed for a minute, but then something happened and the dog left and was hurt or something. I'm not exactly sure, but it was a little over 40 hours when I got there, and I started at the beginning, and I started at the shot site like I always do, just because, just in general, I don't trust nobody or anything but Tater, and or JoJo if she's there, whatever. But on this particular track, I only ran Tater because I knew it was going to be hard. But we started at the shot site and went all the way around. Hunter's like, yeah, this is right where the other dog had went, and we went around. We got to where the general area where the other dog had it bayed, went about another half a mile, and Tater barked off. And I said, there he is. He's still alive, and went, a couple 100 yards, had to bait him up and a cut over,
What kind of shot was it?
It clipped the front of his shoulder and got in his brisket a little bit. It got just inside his chest, just enough to kind of weaken him up, but he still had four strong legs, but it got it just in the chest enough. It probably done just a little bit, but 2 days later, he probably wasn't going to live. He was pretty weak. He didn't go far after we jumped him, but yeah, that was 40 hours. I mean, I've got a couple over 2 days, a 24-hour-old track in the wintertime. Yeah. And that's another thing too. So all 24, 48-hour-old tracks aren't the same. Like in bow season, when it's hot and dry, a 12-hour-old track is tough, Yeah. But now January, February, when we've got a lot of moisture on the ground, and all, I mean, these dogs, and they will, I mean, a 24-hour-old track's it's really not hard.
Yeah, it's not that bad for them. And see, and like I said, this has been a topic that we've talked to, I don't know how many, like aging tracks and, the length of time the track's been on the ground and all that. And there's only been a couple of times in my life that I know exactly how old the track was. And it's because, I seen it with my own eyes. I seen the game, the whole process. I waited X amount of time to come back, put the dog on the track, so I could see how he would react. And I mean, it was just, he took it a 3-hour track, just like a 5-minute track, So I was like, well, this nose is a lot stronger. Yeah. But a lot of people, once they get into the cur dogs, the blackmouth curs, the Kimmers, the mountain curs, Catahoulas, pretty much any kind of cur dog like that, man, 4 to 6 hours, they're like, dude, you show me a cur dog that'll take a 6-hour-old track, and I'm like, I've got a few. But then again, at the same time, it's like, how do we really know how old that track is unless we see it?
The game or it was on a game camera? And that's the good thing about the game cameras, or like a cell cam, is like you have a bait pile with a pig, be like, okay, the boar hog is here.
But you got to know you catch the same one. So, but like in Kyle Lim's case, it's like, okay, the guy called me at 5 o'clock this evening, and we didn't go till 5 o'clock the next evening to go track it. So how old it was. Like you have a definite way to tell, and I just think that's amazing. I really do. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer to be within that 12, 16 hours. Like once you hit, and this is just my thoughts on it. I don't claim that this is exactly right. I feel like it's just what I see. I feel like once the sun heats that track up a couple times, I feel like it gets hard. Like once it goes through a couple heats, you shoot a deer this morning, sun shines on it today, sun goes down, that doesn't bother me, at least in the wintertime. But then if the sun shined on it real hard, wind's blowing on it today and tomorrow, and then I try to run that track tomorrow night, my dogs do struggle a lot more. And it has a lot to do with terrain, like if the sun's been on it, the wind's on it, or if it's, if it's like in a cutover where it's stays pretty shaded and damp and it's real thick, I start seeing scent conditions,
I was going to say, so you pay a lot of attention to scent conditions and the way that the dogs work on different, like you said, different terrains and stuff like that. What about soil types? And we discussed that, like if you get a lot of sandy soils or like in North Alabama, we got a lot of sandy
clay,
sandstone.
Because all the parent material comes from sandstone, a lot of clay, and then a lot of clay. And so a lot of it's sandy clay.
And then like down south, like you guys went hog hunting with us last summer and you see what we hunted. Like, I mean, there's a lot of moisture.
It's sandy loam.
And it seems to hold a track really well.
Especially when you get in those loamy areas, that silt particle is real fine. It's almost like a flour, and I think it has a good moisture content because the clay, the shrink swell capacity is just so high. It can soak up its own weight almost, and it don't leach it out. So I think sometimes that clay might actually get so wet it kind of encases the scent. Whereas that loam might let it still be allowed to transfer. Then when you get to a sandy, the scent could literally evaporate off of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, as far as like soil types, I think, as far as just the ground and ground cover in general and how much moisture is on that track,
Yeah,
and
that's your determining factor.
yeah. Yeah. And that's just what I see, like I said, in bow season, cool. Early on when it's hot and dry, it's a lot harder than later on in the wintertime, for sure.
That's pretty cool because, like I said, we've been doing this with all different types of houndsmen and different types of dogs. We discuss it, and that's what you specialize in more. It's scent, so figured you'd be somebody to really ask on that. So
what are some tips and tricks you have for doing those tracks or getting your dog to take those older tracks in those drier conditions?
I really think it just takes an experienced dog that, I think there's two. So there's maybe a personality trait of the dog that, like if you get a dog that's real high strung, maybe that dog, just takes, or either never has the discipline or it takes it several years to develop the discipline to really slow down, and take that deer step for step. But then, just having a dog that will slow down enough, or if the scent conditions are hard, that, like Tater will slow down to a crawl if he needs to, and he'll flip leaves over. He's smelling underneath leaves.
He's just methodical.
And he'll go step for step if that's what he has to do. And so, but I think once the dog is kind of getting finished out, and he's associated that scent with a dead prey, or an injured animal. I think that kind of gives them the ability to stay with that track, and even though it's hard, they'll slow down and stay with it. I mean, young dogs, it takes more to get them excited and to keep their focus, but an older dog, they'll stay with it. They'll learn.
Yeah. And so you said you were an off-leash tracker, and like we've talked about on-lead trackers. So is that just because, like in Alabama, you can be an off-leash tracker? Because I know some states, so like you can't like turn your dog loose; you have to have them on a leash. So like, what are the rules and regs here in Alabama? And like, do any of them basically what is the word I'm looking for? That hold you back. I don't know the synonym for that. That keep you from doing something. Hinder. There we go.
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, some states will not allow you to track a deer off lead. They require you to track on lead. And so that's a whole different approach. Not that it's bad. I feel like your recovery rates are a lot lower.
Get a bloodhound.
Yeah, a live deer. They for the most part they can't do a whole lot with it, but
seems like it'd be a lot slower as well.
Oh yeah, and man, deer's sort of like hogs, especially if they're injured. They're going to be in the thickest, nastiest stuff you can get. The last thing I want is a 100-pound dog or bloodhound dragging me through briars. Which my dogs aren't 100-pound bloodhounds, but I still don't want them dragging me through the briars.
That's right.
But yeah, in Alabama, we can track off lead, with the exception of like management areas. Most of them, all of them, I think, will require you to track on lead. And so, I don't really track on management areas and stuff. But so yeah, Alabama's. You're talking about some of the rules and regulations. Alabama's, and I guess some of the other states are similar. But Alabama, we really don't have any laws that are directly related to tracking.
Oh, I got you.
Like Mississippi, this last year, they passed some legislation that was specifically addressed deer tracking, or tracking deer with dogs. And so Alabama, we really don't have. Which, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but we really don't have any laws that really
it's a good thing, I'm telling you, because we went through it with the hogs, we didn't really have any laws or anything. And I'll be honest with you, there was nowhere near as many people doing it. And like we pretty much did what we want to, and we had tons of places to hunt. Like I said, because there wasn't a lot of people doing it. And there was never any issues really. And then, man, once we started getting all these regulations and stipulations and they changed the laws and restricted us, man, it changed. It's just not good. You know, so maybe they'll keep it to where you guys can have a little bit of free reign, you know, as long as it doesn't get, I don't see where deer tracking would get out of control or anything myself, you know, but
I think white-tailed deer is probably the number one most pursued game animal probably in the U.S.
I would think, yeah.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of there. You know, there's some people that's just sort of ignorant to what we do as trackers.
Yeah.
And you know, there's people that, and for whatever reason, not many, like the overwhelming majority is in favor of what we do.
Yep.
But you know, there's some that want to put us in the same category as dog hunters, like, you know, for deer dog hunting.
And what's the difference in that? So that's we had that in there too, didn't we?
Yeah. Well, so I'm not out hunting. I'm not out casting my dogs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my dogs won't run any deer. You know, they. And I'm not saying they. You know, I know like deer trackers that's getting out there started. They'll have a young dog that might trash on a live deer, but it ain't gonna catch it. Like it ain't gonna bay it up. A deer that's, you know, a deer doesn't have, you know, I guess when you get into the fight or flight, you know, decisions of a deer doesn't want to fight. It always wants to run unless it can't, you know. So a deer that's not hurt isn't going to bay, you know. And so yeah, we can't, you know, I've never seen anybody. I'm not saying that nobody in the history of the world has ever done it, but I've been after a lot of deer, and a deer that is not hurt and wounded and weak, you know, my dogs ain't going to bay it. They're not going to catch up with it. The deer's just going to run and run and run. And, you know, my dogs will never outrun a deer.
Yeah. You know? They would have to be, that's where the dog hunting would come in, you know, because when you have deer doggers, guys that run deer, the pursuit of, to get a deer, you know, they have dogs that will stay with them and they'll run them till they just can't run anymore, and they'll have to take a bay sometimes, you know. But that's a whole different style, you know. It's a different thing. It's a totally different dog. Like you said, and those dogs right there, you probably couldn't even blood track a deer with them. No, it's just something totally different.
Yeah, and I tell, you know, they like there's probably a few folks out there that don't really like the idea of, you know, of the dogs baying a wounded deer, you know. But one thing about it, I can promise you, if my old fat jug-headed dog Tater can run one down and bay it, I will promise you a pack of coyotes ain't gonna have any trouble.
And that's the thing. That's what I was getting at too with the different style of dog for the deer hunting. Is like you got a dog that's a recovery dog, and you have these other type dogs like, you know, the running walkers, the foxhounds, and these dogs are built to run, you know, 15, 16 miles an hour for a whole day. Yeah, you know, you go to the fox pens and watch these performance races like that. I mean, they do a 6-hour race like it ain't nothing. And they're running, you know, double digits for 6 hours. I mean, a deer like that, you can put a live deer, you can run him till he bays in certain conditions, not all the time, but that's a totally different dog. Like you said, if Tater was going to do that, the deer would have to be wounded.
Yeah,
you know, and if the deer's wounded and he's baying that deer, a coyote is going to run. It's not going to have any trouble. And then the deer goes to waste. You know, I know the coyotes get to eat, but then that would defeat the purpose of a hunter that, you know, doing what he does.
Yeah, and just in the nature of being ethical,
Yeah.
and there's nothing when it comes to hunting, and just good sportsmanship. There's nothing more ethical than doing everything you can do to recover a wounded deer.
Yep.
I don't think. Me being a deer tracker, I don't think, hiring or getting a deer tracking dog, to come help find your wounded deer. I don't think that should be mandatory, but before it was outlawed, to me, it would be more mandatory than being outlawed, just because I think the most ethical thing, and, when it comes to just the spirit and nature of being a conservationist, as outdoorsmen, we really owe it, to the animal, to ourselves, and just other sportsmen or ourselves, just doing everything we can do to recover the deer. And that's what we're doing. I'm not saying it's like hog hunting or coon hunting or everything else. There's probably some bad apples out there somewhere,
Oh, yeah.
and it's just like deer hunting, there's some bad deer hunters that's out spotlighting deer at night or
Exactly.
shooting them off the side of the road, but that don't mean all deer hunters are bad. And so for deer tracking, the overwhelming majority, 99.9%, I know a lot of them. And with some of the Facebook groups, you kind of get to see what everybody's doing as well. But, for the most part, everybody's just really good people, and their goal is to just recover deer and help folks. It's not trying to,
it's about recovering. It's about recovering the animal.
And so, when it comes to conservation, there's nothing more ethical than doing everything you can do to recover a deer,
Yeah,
I agree.
Guys like us, as the hog doggers, we deal with a lot of flack from deer hunters that still hunt. During deer season, like, well, y'all ain't supposed to be hunting and blah blah blah. Well, yeah, we can. Legally we can still run our dogs
during the day.
Yeah, but we honestly we don't very very seldom do we during deer season. We have our own private properties that we can go do that. And we try not to disturb anyone, and it's a genuine respect thing. It's like I don't want to mess nobody up, but at the same time, I've had the same people complain about us running dogs, and then call and say, "Hey, can you bring one of your dogs and track this deer for me?"
Yeah,
and they would never let us run our dogs on their property because it runs the deer off. That's what that's the excuse. I'm like, no, I don't have deer dogs. If I ran deer dogs, they would probably run your deer all over the country. But at the same time, like you were saying all through this episode, how many times have you went and tracked a deer and it was wounded, didn't find it, or they missed, and you had that dog all over that property, and then 2 or 3 days later, it's right back on camera.
Oh, yeah.
Almost always.
Yeah.
So the dogs do not affect the deer movement.
There was a study done by the University of Clemson in the late 90s, and it was on a big management area in South Carolina, I believe. And they basically did a hunter survey, and it was like, okay, how did this coon hunting that's been opened up on this section of the WMA affect the deer that you've seen? Mm-hmm. And on average, there was none to a slight increase in deer movement because they're bumping deer out of their beds at night. It gets them to move. It makes them...
But they're not leaving.
No,
they're
not
just
leaving.
Moving. They're up on their feet moving.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I feel like, especially during deer season, like with a buck, is they don't even fully understand the biology of a deer, and they don't understand that a buck there's 3 different personality types. You're going to have one that's going to be a home range. You're going to have one that's going to move completely out during the rut. And then you're going to have one that's going to come kind of in that mid range where he's been all summer and post rut, but then he's also going to kind of wander off. And I feel like a lot of times people might assume that a deer that has that personality type where it's moving off and it's going to go to his winter range. That means like, hey, we pushed that deer out or something pushed it out.
He was going to go that way.
He's leaving
anyway.
No matter what. That's just his personality type.
And these are opinions.
These
are facts.
Dr. Demerit. I'm gonna
Nathan has a degree. Nathan has a degree in it as well.
I'll put in the description.
These are for listeners out there, not you, Kyle. You know this.
I'm gonna put the study and links and stuff like that to some of this information I'm saying in the description as well, so everybody can do their own independent research. And if I misquote something, I apologize.
And I've seen it myself, like tracking at night. A lot of times deer won't even get out of its bed. Like I'm talking about like 20 yards from you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll just shine over there and look at it, and it'll just lay there. Tater will look at it and going back tracking. Sometimes the deer stands up, or whatever. But like at night, especially, they don't do anything, And Tater, like I said, Tater doesn't care unless it's that scent, I'll tell you, this is a cool story about Tater. I think it was 2 years ago. Had a leg shot buck, and so we track the deer, and we we catch up to it, jump the deer, and Tater has been stopped at roads, and this wasn't a big road, but it's like a little bitty back, like a little 1-lane road. It might have even been a dirt road, but Tater stopped at that road. So he jumped the deer and ran it a little ways, and Tater stopped at that road, and came back, which he rarely does, but sometimes when he gets to a road, he'll stop. And the deer got way ahead, and my female JoJo, she stayed on him, and she took the deer, bait him in a pond, upper end of a pond. Well, so just the way the deer kind of circled around, when Tater got back to me, we pulled off the deer's track and just kind of walked in a straight line to where they had the deer bait. And so at this point, Tater's not on the deer's track anymore. Well, I come over the hill and I see JoJo and the deer at the upper end of this little pond, and she's got the deer bait, and Tater's looking, and you can see the buck, see JoJo, and he don't care. And I'm like, what is going on? And she's just sitting there barking at it. Well, I get started down the hill, and the deer breaks bay a little bit and gets through a fence or whatever, and goes on down through there, and bays up again. Well, Tater don't care. He just walks with me until we get down there to where that deer was standing, and he smelled that deer's track. Then he took off and went and caught the deer.
Wow, because it was the same deer.
Yeah, and so smelling, seeing a deer doesn't mean anything to him unless it's got that scent, and that's and JoJo's the same way, and so.
And that's what I'm saying. These aren't just conclusions you're drawing, just like, well, that's what he acts like. It's like, no, you see this.
This is observation.
Yeah, this is 100% observation.
Yeah, I see it all the time.
Yeah,
I see it all the time. Yeah, deer out in fields and stuff, and he'll just look at them. It don't mean anything to him unless it's that deer that's been shot.
So, what are some of the myths about wounded deer that people have?
Okay, so there's two big ones, and man, we joke about this all the time. The first one is everybody says a wounded deer will not go uphill. They're like, it always goes downhill. Oh. There ain't an ounce of truth to that. I've had people, we get to a track and they're like, well, I know he went downhill because there ain't no way he'd went up that mountain. And I'm like, yeah, he probably went up that mountain and the next two, you know. And yeah, so yeah, a wounded deer does not care whether it's uphill or downhill. I guess another one is people see blood, like they'll send me pictures of blood, and they'll be like a little small, little bitty bubbles, mm-hmm. And they're like, well, that's I've got lung blood because it's got bubbles. I'm like, no, you ain't got lung blood. Like if it's big, bright pink blood or something, it's kind of mucusy looking. Okay, you might have lung blood. Yeah. Just because you got a little bubble, that's just artery blood. It just splashed on the ground. Mm-hmm. It's probably muscle blood. But I see that a lot. They're like, and I guess another one is they're like, well, he's probably laying in a creek somewhere. And there is a little truth to that one. So especially gut shot deer, I do find some of them every year that's laying in water, but it's not many. It's not many at all. Now I do find them laying close to water sometimes, but I've got a theory on that is, the water is at the lowest point, and I feel like especially in the evenings and at night, those deer will lay in these bottoms because the thermals are falling to them. Yeah. And it's it's more that than the water most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. And I feel like when they lay in these bottoms, the thermals is coming to them, and that deer can smell everything around him.
And that's what a lot of people don't understand, that it's about survival for these animals.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. They're not doing it to be comfortable. They're doing that. Like you said, the thermals are falling down to them. They get to that lowest point, and especially if they're injured, that's where they're going to go. And they can get there and pay attention to what's coming.
Yeah. And a deer's, back against the wall place is in water, so I think a lot of times I find them bedded up close to water or dead close to water. A lot of times is because I feel like that's their plan. If coyotes get after them or whatever, they're going to get out in that water, because the ones I get that are alive, 95% of them are going to go to a creek or something to fight the dogs. They're going to bay in water, if they're alive most of the time.
We deal with that with a lot of big boar hogs, or big hogs in general. A lot of them will go to, like you said, and I think some of it, at first I used to think, well, it's just to flee. They were going to hit the water and swim, but not every time. They'll hit that water and they'll go out there and get a certain depth, and that's where they'll make their stand.
Yep. And that's what the deer do. Yep.
Okay, so that's kind of the same thing with the deer. That's pretty cool.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, that's.
I've heard they go to water. I've heard that for all my life. That deer will go to water, but I didn't know. I never really correlated that with making their last stand there.
Yeah, I mean, I think gut shot deer sometimes we'll find them laying in water or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not many. It's more rare than not that I find a dead deer in water, but it does happen.
It's more the ones that are alive, the ones that are still alive.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're running across these deer that are wounded and they're still alive, and, of course, everybody needs to make as quick an ethical shot as they can. What can some of these hunters do to increase their odds of a quick recovery when they call you? If they know they've already made a marginal shot, or anything could happen. I mean, it's not even their fault, just something went wrong. And what can they do to increase a quick recovery?
Yeah. To make them, because my goal is to give them the best opportunity to be successful. And so when I tell everybody, like, just use good common horse sense. Go, if you shoot a deer, give it an hour, go look for your deer. And look, go mark where you last seen it. Go to the shot site, see what kind of blood you got. If you see anything that makes you think it's guts, well, then don't go any further. Like, everybody would know that, but man, hunters cannot do it. Like, they've got to go look. They've got to keep tracking. But that's probably the biggest thing. Is go look for your deer. Use some good common sense. So if you go out there, and you've went a couple 100 yards and you hadn't found the deer, you need to back out, because I would say if the deer's went 200 yards, and you've only been there an hour, there's a very good chance that deer's still alive. If you've shot it in the guts, you need to give that deer 8 to 12 hours. Especially with a bow. If you shot it with a 300 Win Mag, you might you might get that down to 6 or 8 hours or something. But yeah, where I see hunters mess up the most is they'll track a deer for 300 or 400 yards, then they'll jump the deer up, and then they'll keep tracking, and they'll just keep pushing.
Yeah,
and what that deer's doing is just staying 200 yards ahead of them or whatever. And if they would just stop, and the thing is, they a lot of times have limited property. They can't, they don't know their neighbors, or their neighbors don't want them on their property.
Yeah.
And they'll keep pushing that deer until it's off on somebody else's property that they can't go to, and
that's where they start. That's where they lose it. Yeah.
That's where they lose, or they'll push it, across a big river or across the highway or, or something. But the further that deer goes, the better chance that there's going to be some obstacle that causes us to not be able to get it.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing is just wait. Like dead's dead,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you ain't gonna hurt nothing by waiting, and a lot of times, and again, I don't charge, it's whatever, but a lot of times, I'm the last call,
Yeah.
where if they shot a 150-inch deer, they've been hunting all year, go look. But if you had any chances at all, don't booger it up,
Exactly.
Just call me. And if it can be got, I mean, if it can be got, I'm very confident that I'll put it on tailgate, and
nice.
But there's a lot of them, a lot of people and they'll keep pushing it. They'll booger the track up. They'll get 10 of their buddies. Like I said, I tell everybody, go look for your deer. Don't get everybody at the hunting camp to come out there at grid circle.
Yeah.
Don't get your neighbor's chihuahua, come out there and,
That's right.
scratch around, but that I can't understand some of it. They'll spend thousands of dollars for a lease, thousands and thousands for ATVs and guns and everything else. And they're scared to death that they're going to have to pay something for a tracking dog to come get their trophy.
Yeah. I don't get it either. It's like I was saying earlier about the whole dog method. It's like, I don't get you guys sometimes, and it's not everybody, but like, I don't mean that against everybody. But like you said, some of them just don't use common sense. It does. We had a guy that was in a club in the lease we have now, and he was one of those, and like he only needed a dog when he needed it, and every time else it was horrible. We were coon hunting one night, seen a nice buck, and I told his son, I was like, if you go right here in the morning, it was bow season. I said, you'll get this deer. He went over there that next morning, slipped in there, shot the deer, sent me a picture. Like 45 minutes later, his dad's calling. He's like, how'd you know that was going to be there? I was like,
because he about ran me down in the cornfield.
He wouldn't leave us alone.
I was having to holler at him. I was like, look, deer, go on.
And he was like, what do you mean? He was like, well, y'all had dogs? I was like, yeah, the dogs were running away from him, and he was literally
what
chasing us.
Yeah.
And he was like,
yeah.
I was like, they're just curious, man. They didn't know what, we were in the middle of a cornfield. That deer was like, what are y'all guys? What are y'all doing? And so I don't know why they wouldn't want to, get a good dog to come in there and find their trophy. And a trophy doesn't necessarily have to be a 180-inch deer. It can be a doe that's your daughter or your grandkids or your niece or somebody just took, trophies a trophy.
Trophies come in all sizes.
That's exactly right.
All sizes. So, but yeah, I mean, we're glad to help, folks just use good common horse sense, and
so do you have like a website, or how do you, how can people reach you during tracking season? Social media or what?
Yeah, I don't even have a page just for my dogs. I've got my own Facebook page, but it's mainly just word of mouth and whatever.
You need to get you a little Facebook page set up for Tater and JoJo, man.
Yeah,
track masters. There you go.
Yeah, I probably should, but yeah, man, I love it for sure.
So do you guys? And I know you were talking. I know we had several things that we discussed talking about. This is something I've been curious of. Most people that hunt with dogs, we all converge at some point in time, and we get together, and we go hunt and run our dogs. Hog doggers, like, we'll make plans and go to meet with this guy or this guy, and we'll all hunt this property, and we'll take turns turning dogs loose. So do you ever turn your dogs loose with other dogs? Or
yeah,
that's what do like maybe you and somebody. I know you and Austin Marsh are that's how I met you. It's through Austin. And I was just curious if maybe y'all ran tracks together sometimes or something, you know?
We do, you know, like, so maybe the very beginning of deer season, like in bow season, and like towards the end when rut's kind of over and it kind of slows down, you know, there's not near as many tracks. Like when hunting's wide open, like we've all got more tracks than we can run. But when it's kind of slow, yeah, we do.
Okay.
So yeah, Austin's a really good friend of mine. He's got a really good dog, Popcorn. Another tracker, Blaine Willingham, has actually been a huge help to me. I've got several of my dogs.
Well, I've heard that name a lot over the years. A lot.
John Stevens is another one that's up my way. Another guy up further up north, David Jones. Like there's several really, really good deer trackers, you know, that's got really, really good dogs. And yeah, we're
now, what area are you in? So for the listeners that, you know, if anybody's out there listening that might need your services later on.
Yeah, so I'm about 30 minutes south of Huntsville. Live in a town called Arab.
Okay.
Yeah, I pretty much get most all North Alabama. I try to be an hour and a half, but I've went on some road trips just because I didn't have anything else to do. So
yeah, that's what's kind of like so you said about what, an hour and a half is about what you want to try to stay within.
Yeah, typically, you know, but like I said, it just kind of depends. If I don't have anything going on, or if I can get a couple tracks kind of lined up. I mean, I got 3 out of state last year, you know.
Really?
So, but yeah, so
that's
we
when
do
you
that.
hit the big times. That's the big time, man.
Yeah,
they call you from other states.
Well, sometimes you just need something to do.
There you go.
Deer tracking fills the void, you know. But yeah, we're pretty. We're like everybody else, you know. We're me and tracking buddies are good friends, you know, and even outside of the woods, you know, good friends and talk and yeah, try to run together. You know, Tater, I can't hardly run Tater with just any dog. Tater's he ain't always real nice, you know.
Yeah, he's kind of peculiar. He's a peculiar dog, or particular.
Yeah, he can be a little dog aggressive sometimes around dead deer and stuff. But
yeah,
it's only then, you know, he'll hunt, track, you know, with their other dogs just fine. But you know how cur dogs are. You get too many male dogs, and if they get a break, they're gonna end up, you know.
Yeah, they got to have something going on all the time.
All the time, yeah. But yeah, we hang out, track together a good bit for sure.
Is there anything else that you feel like, you know, that we didn't cover in this that you want to go over?
Man, we've got a lot of it.
I was going to say we had. There's a lot of information. Most of our podcasts that we do are a lot of joking and cutting up because, you know, we usually know the people that we're talking to fairly well. And a lot of guys that run the hog dogs, we're never serious about nothing and we're full of it, you know. And so there's very little information and a whole lot of misinformation. But this one has been a lot of good information, man, for real. You're a wealth of knowledge. And, you know, I applaud you for taking it serious and the things that you do. And I wish
I know at least one guy named Larry from Ohio is going to listen to this, and he's going to appreciate it.
Yeah, and like I said, there's people out there that I know right now. I can tell you, there's going to be guys that have hog dogs that are never going to admit to this, but they're going to say, you know what? I'm going to be sitting on that tailgate and hold that little stimulation button down until the dog comes to me, and then I'll let off of it. Yeah, I guarantee you, because I know so many, they do it exactly opposite.
Yeah, turn it wide open,
hit it, drag it over there. And I'm like, look, man, every time you come to me, if you call me and you smack me in the face, the second or third time, I'm not coming back. It's like, no, I don't want to be around you. And so that's the way I look at the dog part. So there's so many different genres of dog guys out there that the process is pretty much universal though. Like everybody could use these things and everybody get along. And I really feel that that's what we're trying to is one of the goals that we're accomplishing with what we're doing here is we're bringing a lot of unity together. It's a diverse group of people, and everybody can share methods and stuff like that and make it work.
Oh yeah, man. We're all, at least in the dog world, we're all dog men. We may do different things, but yeah, I mean, I love working with my dogs, and when my dogs bark, I know they're looking at that deer, and it does something inside of me. And that many other things can't do. But yeah, you said something. If I had one thing to say, I'd say, like deer hunters, they really don't understand how many deer they could have recovered. There's always folks that just let a lot of deer get away, and they have no idea how many of them could have been recovered.
There you go.
And it's a lot of them. There's getting to be a lot of young deer trackers. I'll say this too, like everybody means well, but everybody's not the same. Everybody's got to start off somewhere.
Yes.
But do your research and find you a good handler. Before deer season and everything. And like I said, those folks just starting off that maybe has a puppy, and they don't mean anything bad. They're glad to help, but if you just do your research, but there's a handful in North Alabama that are really, really good, and there's a plenty of handlers out there that can get a deer. If it can be got, they can get it,
That's it.
And so,
well, man, I think that's a good note right there to leave it off on.
Yeah.
Kyle, man, we really appreciate you.
It was a wonderful time.
And like I said, I think we'll probably might do another one with you. We might call Austin and get us, get everybody in on. And what I would like to do is maybe do it during when season's going on. Once it first gets going, then we'll get us some good stories and stuff like that as we progress. And of course, once turkey season's over, we're going to drag you guys back out there to the swamp. And we're going to catch a hog.
Oh yeah, I wasn't going to let you get away without holding you to it.
That's it, but man,
hey, I ain't stabbed nothing since February now.
That's it.
I'm getting a twitch.
There you go.
I understand.
All right, my brother. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on with us.
Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah.
All right,
man. Yeah.
Y'all have a good
Appreciate you guys.
Yes, sir.
See ya.
All right, y'all. Well, that was Mr. Kyle Tolbert. Like I said, great guy. This dude is really one of a kind. He's very, very humble.
He's got the passion.
He does. Like I said, we met him through a friend of ours, and they went hunting with us last year.
Yeah,
I didn't know that he was a pastor or nothing at first, and it was like, man, we were just being rough, raw, rowdy. Hey, he just hog doggers. Hey, he never said a word. Didn't push it down us or nothing like that. Absolute fantastic time.
Wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, very, very intelligent. I mean, he lives up to, like I said, he lives up toward Huntsville, and there's a place up there called NASA. So he's around them guys a lot in there. So Mr. Kyle is somebody that can. If you guys ever need some info on that, you get in touch with us, and we can put you in touch with him if you can't get in touch with him already. So, once again, we appreciate y'all trying to keep these things coming at you as fast as we can, as often as we can. And to achieve that and to get to the next step, we got to have your support. We got to get this thing to where we get all the downloads we can. Don't forget that we're on YouTube as well. It's
YouTube, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Spotify, soon to be Apple Podcast. This might end up being one of the first podcasts that end up on Apple Podcasts as far as a new episode.
So make sure that you follow all the procedures on these things, because that's what's going to get us to where we can keep doing this. I didn't think that it was really all that much until I was getting a phone call every couple of weeks, or a text and saying, hey, y'all need to put another episode out. Then it was once a week, and now it's 12, 15 times a day. And so hey, we're delivering. So you guys got to deliver and support us. And for those people that are supporting us, we've got a list, and we've been trying to throw them in there all we can. Nate's been working like our little commercial deals going on with it and add them in there. So if y'all hear that throughout it, just remember that's our country boy ads right there. We gotta keep this thing rolling. Nate, anything else you want to add?
I feel like we're starting to build a good community here. We're getting a lot of positive feedback. Keep it up. Like I said, make sure to comment down below. Tell us what you thought. Hey, I liked it. Hey, I didn't like you did this. If you got a real harsh critique, don't make me cry. You can private message me though.
Yeah.
You can get
but
us
I'll cuss you out too.
Yeah, if you come with some sideways shit, we're gonna set you straight. But
maybe not. I don't know.
I've
been cussed out a bunch.
If it's funny, we'll at least appreciate it. But
if you get mad and you really get mad and start, I'm gonna laugh.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be funny. But we appreciate all y'all. Thank you for listening.
All right, till the next one. See y'all.